Well, after what seemed like an eternity, the Perth Motorplex season got underway with a bang last Saturday night with a Powerpalooza event. It was just sensational. Hello, welcome to Track Chat. I'm Graeme Sinden, alongside of Con Migro. Con, what a show.
Well, Graham, I can't believe it. In fact, I was making a comment to a couple of people before the show started. That was the start of our 23rd season at the Perth Motorplex on Kwinana Beach. I mean, where have the last 23 years gone?
And how has Speedway developed over those 23 years as well at the Perth Motorplex? I mean, the venue looks as good now as it did 23 years ago, doesn't it?
Well, if there's ever any doubters about how popular the sport is, I think it really showcased it at its best between the drag racing and the speedway. A few little gimmicky things like the monster trucks, the fireworks, the burnouts, but generally overall, they got the biggest bang for the buck they'll probably get for most of any speedways in the world.
Well, I understand a crowd of 8,000 plus
Yes.
for Speedway, following on from 11,000
Yes.
for the monster truck show a week or two ago.
Correct.
Boy, Speedway in Perth is booming, isn't it?
And how lucky were we the fact that they had tipped a few showers on Saturday, which didn't come, but not long after Speedway finished on Saturday night, it started raining. It virtually rained all day Sunday. So we were very, very lucky and to get out of jail. And there's still even a little bit more rain tipped earlier in the week. And then, of course, next weekend it's going to be fine again.
Yes. And of course, that was following on from a bit of rain on Friday, which juiced the track up a little bit. I understand you were speaking to Mickey Rimmer about the water and the preparation.
Well, he was saying to me that they didn't have to put a lot of water on the track because, see, being clay, when the water soaks through the clay, it then starts to come up, like it gets sucked up
Yes.
by the tyres and the like. And he said it's quite amazing. They had to give a few spot waters, but nothing much. Of course, then the track was it was like the Indy 500. It was very, very fast, and I don't think they like the track as juiced up as that, because I know Gavin said to me after, he said, I don't like it when it's like that, Dad. It is too fast. I mean, Caden Manders and Williamson and Kai Script, these guys handle it, but some of the other mere mortals, it makes things pretty tough.
Yes, indeed. Look, just sticking on Caden Manders, I thought the speed cars were sensational. They had some reasonable numbers there, but what I really liked was the quality of the cars.
You're right.
I mean, 4 or 5, 6 of those front runners in that field, they were so equal and so fast. It's just incredible.
Well, I've often said to you, and I'm probably repeating myself, but it's worth noting is that the top, say, 8 or 9 cars or 10 cars in WA, the only thing that our drivers lack against what the Americans did, they could take those cars to America and be easier winning car. It's just the only thing that we lack here is the amount of laps compared to what they do in America. But the cars, there's nothing wrong with them. The technology is right here. We're right up to the minute. And, of course, the likes of Graeme Jones, Rod Bennett, Wayne Cover, Wayne Redmond, all these people behind the scenes of putting race cars on the track for their drivers to compete. And this track being world class like it is, we're getting a beautiful bang for our buck. And speed cars, as they call them midgets in America, but we call them speed cars here, they are really going to be a glamour division this year.
Oh, indeed. And it was lovely to see Keenan Fleming have his first win for 2023.
Yep.
The car looks great, very fast, handles well. He handled that first heat in unknown conditions. He was out there in the first heat and had to give it a good old crack. So well done to Keenan.
I remember many years ago when the bikes were running at Claremont, there was a guy, Andrew Cowan, he was racing the motorbike speedway, and his father came to me one night. He said, Con, he said, if there's ever another world war, he said, these guys will be your pilots. And I said, oh, wow. But when you see the young guys like Keenan and them doing, I mean, they've been off the track virtually for 6 months with not a lot of practice, and they came down and they were doing, near race record times. And that's good to see that the young guys are bringing the sport forward.
Mm-hmm. You may remember at our last Track Chat show, I mentioned that I went down to the Perth Motorplex to watch the first practice session, and I mentioned a few guys' names down there. Caden Manders was one of them. I'm happy to be right on this occasion, Con. David Nylander was the other. He was just sensational. But getting back to Caden, he was smooth and fast all night long, despite the fact having a little problem with they didn't touch the car for the shock absorbers and handling, but they had a little engine problem they had to tweak, and they did that. Sensational driving from Caden.
Yeah, he's a class act. And he's one particular guy. We talk about the Michael Pickens of the world and the Ricky Bruce and the Kyle Larsons, and I'm probably not getting ahead of myself, but he's a sort of young man that if he, ever someone has the sort of money to give a guy a chance, it wouldn't surprise me after spending, if he did go to America, spend 12 months there, he'd be easy in their quarters, up in their ranks, because such a good, smooth operator. He's a thinker. He changes his lines. He knows how to do it. And of course, having a mentor like Graeme Jones, we used to call him the quiet achiever. I mean, you don't have much better tutor than a guy like him. He's won an Australian title, and it won't be long before we saw Caden Manners being an Australian speed car champion. He's won a 360 Australian title.
Yes.
But he's a very talented, very versatile driver.
Mm. Well, you just touched on Graeme Jones and the GJR number 4 racing car. I mean, if you want to see who's a good driver, see who Graeme Jones puts in his car, because he doesn't put mugs in there.
Exactly
and
right.
The likes of Michael Pickens, Alex Bright, Caden Manders, I mean, they're the drivers that Graeme chooses to race his car.
And you made a point too. One of my criticisms last year of speed cars was that their numbers were very difficult to see. And I think on Saturday night, I'm not going to give them 100% yet, but I think I'll give them about an 80%, because they had improved vastly. And I think that as the year goes on, they had good paint jobs with clear numbers, and that's great.
Yeah, the speed cars, they look great, as did lots of divisions, which we'll get onto shortly. Staying on speed cars, Lee Redman, he's back with a vengeance in the 52 car. It looks great and it's fast, sounds good, and he's just loving driving it.
Well, it's again. I think when he got the presentation of his award at the end of the night, this guy said he's ridden solos, he's driving sprint cars open and 360s, wingless cars, late models. He's back in the division that he probably loves most of all, and he was thoroughly enjoying himself. Like I call him young. Lee, he's young to me, but he's 52 now. And I just think the maturity has really risen to the top. He's looking good, and he's going to be a very hard man to defeat this year.
Well, he had a few injuries with his knee and that sort of stuff. He seems to have shaken all that off. Physically, he's really, really fit, in good trim. There's not an ounce of fat on him. He's in good mental and physical condition. The car's brilliant, so look out for a big season from Lee, I would suggest.
It looks $1 million.
Yeah. And, of course, also in speed cars this year, to bolster the numbers at the top end and the quality end, our mate Daniel Harding.
Well, yeah. Well, I spoke to him at the end of the night. He was wrapped. He said, Con, he said, you can't believe it. I said, you're tired now? He said, no, I'm not. He said, there is nothing more exciting. And tonight he said, I got a double whammy. I was running sprint cars. I raced my speed car. It was probably jumping from car to car. He said, it took me a couple of laps to work out what I was in. Yeah. But he said, look, I got it and I loved it. He never got it his own way in either discipline, but he still drove very well. And I think that we're in for a vintage year as Speedway. And I think, there's a buzz amongst the crowd. I sent a little note to Gavin yesterday. I said, the expectation of the fans that were talking to me on Saturday night, I'm trying to tell you I spoke to the 8,000, but I spoke to a fair few, and they'd all, as I walked past, g'day Con, how's going on? And they said, we're in for a great year. And there's that expectation in the air. And I think, well, looking at that, and we laid the foundations of what's going to be a ripper.
Yes, indeed. Con, let's go for a quick break with our sponsors' ads, and we'll be right back after this. Don't go away.
Whether it's your car, truck, boat or earth-moving equipment, Chayman's Auto Electrics and Air Conditioning have got you covered. Operating since 1983, they're the most respected vehicle repairers in Perth, operating from their well-equipped workshop and sales outlet in Welshpool, and a fleet of specialist mobile repair vehicles. Don't trust your vehicle to anyone else. Chayman's Auto Electrics and Air Conditioning are the experts in the field. Call 9362 6772 or visit us at 103 Harris Street in Welshpool.
RCA Civil Group have gained a sound reputation for providing quality civil projects throughout Western Australia. Their scope of work includes road shoulder construction and stabilisation, drainage, concreting and asphalting, plus bulk and detailed earthworks. RCA Civil Group, Western Australia's leading civil contractor. Contact RCA Civil Group on 1300 1 Civil. Well, welcome back. Thanks to our sponsors there. Con, we left off talking about speed cars, but how good were the sprint cars?
Again, I think there was 24 cars of absolute brilliant quality, and some of the fancy stars that we all thought were going to jump and murder the rest of them didn't happen. And we got a driver who's been driving since Adam was the Lance Corporal in the Boy Scouts, but breakthrough for his first win, and that's young Kai Script. I call him the Hotfoot, and a lot of people say, "What do you call him the Hotfoot?" Well, apart from being a pretty good driver, he was once burnt in his race car, and he had the wrong socks on. He had nylon socks, which now he wears proper fireproof. Anyway, he got a burnt foot. He ended up in the hospital, and so I nicknamed him the Hotfoot, and he used to love that. Well, I call him the Hotfoot, and I sent him a message on Sunday morning after the race, and he's over the moon because that was his first victory. And when he was back after the event, for the Sprint Car Engines group, they have a web page that they go to, and he said, I was struggling to say anything, Con, because it's the first time I've ever had to do it in his interview, but he was so excited, and it's probably, I said, well, you got tongue-tied, I can understand that. But what a great thing to see a young man, and this is what I love about Speedway. All of a sudden, when you don't expect it, bang, up they come.
As I understand, he was a late nomination and he wasn't going to drive a tour, but Trevor Jolly, I think, was up in Karratha or somewhere, and so he got to drive late in the week.
Well, Trevor Jolly has got a huge business in the Karratha area, and he's just set up another big branch in Midland, in Great Eastern Highway in Midland, and he is just so busy. I mean, he's a huge businessman, and he just found him trying to give himself the time to race Speedway at the moment. He's got to set that business up first. So he gave Kai a phone. Kai said, "Yep, sounds like a plan. You've got to have a plan in life." And there he is, rewarded straight away with a blue ribbon.
And $5,000 to boot.
Yeah, and some very important Maddington Toyota Sprint Car Engines Group's points.
Big points, yeah.
And the man who was in second place, I thought he showed a lot of maturity staying in second place. I think he could have got up and challenged. I'm not saying he could have won it, and I'm talking about Jason Kendrick, but I think he sat back and he said, well, look, second points at the moment, because this track was so fast. Kai Script did a 12.2852 second lap, so they were a sub 13 second laps in the feature race in traffic. That's quite amazing, Graeme.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Well, you had his time at the beginning of the night. You can probably tell us what that was.
Well, I was just going to say the quick time on the hot laps was AJ Nash at 13.145. Now, in fairness, the track was a little bit greasy early on, and I thought he did an outstanding job. But, Con, what I wanted to see, if you look at this left-hand inside tyre here, you may not be able to see it at home as good. This one here in particular, I mean, that's the reason why he was getting quick times around 13.145 early in the night on a greasy track. It was just sensational.
You know, he's very good at that. I've noticed him last year. He was very good at that. He's got the car set up here. Look at the presentation of the car. Look at that. That's another reason why I'm over the moon about the presentation. And I think with the Australian titles coming to West Australia at long last, providing nothing goes wrong again, because we've had it 2 years and we've had to lose it 2 years. But if it does get off, which I think it will be after Christmas, well, then you're going to see the cars even look better.
Look, I thought the presentation, and we won't get off sprint cars just yet, but the presentation in all divisions I thought was outstanding. In particular, wingless sprint cars, Formula 500s, and you just talked about sprint cars. I mean, boy, oh boy, a lot of cars are absolutely brand new, first time on the track, and it sets the scene for a great season.
Correct. It's looking fantastic here.
Now, talking about the man himself, he was, as you say, over the moon with that win. That's a Bruce Russell flash photo, incidentally. What a win for him.
Well, it was great, and you know he's a really good kid. His mother said to me many years ago, he said he wasn't that good at school, but he really wanted to race Speedway, and he was so determined. And he's got a very successful business in High Wycombe, not far from our recording studio. He has a mechanical business there, and he's doing very well. So he's a young man that's put his life together, the love of something he really wanted to do, and he's done it. And they put themselves up by the shoestrings, as you say. I mean, that's a real success story.
Yeah, absolutely delighted for him, and obviously with a grin on his face, so was he. Magnificent. Now, we talked about presentation, Con, and wingless sprint cars in particular. Their presentation was second to none and the best I've ever seen.
Yeah.
The cars were, I know they're brand new for a brand new season, but despite that, they're just so good to look at and so fast this season.
Well, you're right. They looked $1 million. The only criticism I've got is the two, number one and number two. Brilliant presentation of cars, but a silver number on a black car on a black track, they just look like little silver blobs. And yet, when you were looking in the pits, it wasn't until they got on the racetrack that you couldn't identify their numbers. But the rest of the cars still look good. Yes. And of course, young wedgie. What a great effort for him. I've known him since he's a small boy, and to see him up there driving, and they're loving the show, and the fans are warming to them.
Oh, absolutely. Now, Brendan won the feature race, and well done to you, Brendan. A terrific drive. 17.107 was the fastest lap in that. Darren Humphrey second, and Matt Ivanhoe third. Great drive by all of them.
And Darren Humphrey, I've got to say, Graham, he's a credit. What a driver he is. He's a very smart driver. He's doing everything right. He's probably taking off the way he left off last season, and I'm pleased for him because he's another guy that's dedicated a lot of his life to speedway. It's good to see the results.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, as I say, presentation, the driving, the speed of the cars now, I mean, those lap times that they're doing are slowly creeping up as they're developing the technology in the cars, the chassis, the shock absorbers, they're really getting into it.
Correct.
Con, let's just take another quick break for our sponsors' ads, and we'll be right back after this. Don't go away. Midland High Urban Haulage is a family-owned and operated company. They operate a fleet of prime movers and extendable trailers fitted with remote control cranes capable of moving 20-metre loads up to 22 tonnes. With their vast experience and competitive rates, Midland High Urban Haulage are the team you can trust to move your freight to a 1,000-kilometre radius from Perth. Phone Pete on 0407 294 248 to discuss your needs. Assured Learning Australia are registered training providers offering high-quality training and education courses for the automotive industry. Established in 2016, they have grown to become market leaders in automotive air conditioning and electric vehicle safety service and maintenance courses. Focus on your future. Contact Lyle Barrett at Assured Learning Australia on 0488 038 904. 117 Dundas Road, High Wycombe, WA. Well, welcome back. Thanks for your company. Con, we've mentioned all the divisions. We still got 2 to go. The late models, in fact, were, again, like every other, although it wasn't a point scoring meeting for them, they certainly put the hammer down and got stuck into it. David Nylander was one of those guys I mentioned that was sensational at practice. Let me just read this out for you. Whilst he didn't finish the feature race because his engine let go, he was well in front.
No, they would never caught him.
150 metres, never caught him. But his fastest lap in heat, and he was fastest lap in each of the 3 heats they put on, and the heat feature race. He started out with a 16.383. That was a very greasy track when they first came onto the track. Then he got it down to 15.908 and finished up in the feature at 15.250.
Yeah.
Now that's a sensational lap time. He was certainly a winner in that feature. Absolutely. And Veronica McCann, incidentally, let me just say this, she had a sensational second heat. She won that in a time 8 laps for 2:10.507. Now that was not a bad time because the track hadn't got to that really fast point at that, and she drove sensationally.
And by that time, the moisture was still coming up, as they say. But yeah, Veronica looked very good, and I think that this year she's going to be a hard nut to crack, as they say.
Yes.
The fiery redhead.
Yes.
Well, she's not very fiery, but we call her Red Hot Ronnie, and it's great to see. And you know, it's another name like Nylander. I think it was a bit naughty the late models not making a point score night because, I mean, that's after all, they made a big effort. There were a few missing, the Bosbergens, because of a wedding. And why do people get married on a Saturday night on a speedway season? I don't know, only joking. But the fact is that they were part of a bridal party, I believe young Brent was. But so we missed him. So and then we missed Brad Blake. Now, when they come back, you had 2 or 3. I think Paul Stubber, he's also on the way back.
Yes, indeed. But despite that, they were very, very good. Again, the cars looked great. Yeah. When we got to the feature, in fact, Cody Brown eventually won that after 2 retirements, being David Nylander and Kai Blight. Both had DNFs. But
Graham, what about the start that Cody Brown did in the first feature race?
Yes.
He stopped. He went up high in front of the Highline bar there. He dropped down the curb. It was an absolute dream pass. And he grabbed the lead going down the back straight, and then all of a sudden someone spun behind the field. They had to bring him back again. Anyway, he nearly did it again, but unfortunately, then he had to really fight harder than he was going to fight anyway. But it's good. Talk about people, dedication. He hails from Broome. He's got his car in Perth. It's being looked after here by a group. And he has to fly down sometimes on Friday or a Saturday morning, races. Then he jumps back in his, or not his feet, but he jumps back in an aircraft and flies back to Broome on a Sunday because he runs a pretty big business up that part of the world.
Yeah. Well, the car looks great, and
it looks
even when he's not, on top of his game, the car always looks aggressive and fast, doesn't it? He throws it around with abandon, and is an exciting driver to watch.
And we love him because he's got those one-liners. He's a typical country boy. He says some things he comes out. Sometimes you couldn't repeat them on radio or television, but nevertheless, they're very, very humorous, and the crowd just love it.
Yeah, well, Jason Sutton from DTN did an interview with him, and I was going to ask Jason if I could use that, and I thought better of it because there's a bit of colourful language in there. Talking about the feature race, Cody Brown won it. Matt Nylander back to his very best form, I thought. And, a couple of cars pulled out, but Matt was right up there and in it and looked good in racing.
Looked very good. In fact, I feel happy for Alan. And young Matt didn't race last year for reasons that only he can say, but I think that he's bounced back, and it shows that the cream always rises to the top.
Yes.
So he's good.
Now, Warren Oldfield, great late model name, he was right up there all night long, and he finished a credible third in that feature race, which was really good. Really
very good to see.
And now, Formula 500s again, Con. I thought their presentation was probably better than all the other divisions, to be honest. And I was impressed, as we've already mentioned, about the presentation of wingless and sprint cars and the speed cars. But boy, oh boy, do they look good, and they race well, don't they?
Well, there was 15 cars started the feature race. I think there's about another 5 to 10 cars that weren't there that will be there soon. The national titles here in West Australia this season on around about the same time as the sprint car title. Stephen Element is the son of Ray Element, former champion footballer, but a former speed car racer. Young Chris Dimmick and Nardini. Now, good to see Nardini's back. They never raced much last season, or if they didn't race at all. So you look at that. The fields look good, and when you got good fields, there's some good racing coming our way.
Well, as you say, Australian Formula 500 Championship right here at Perth Motorplex. Boy, I've got a good idea that championship will stay in WA.
Well, we hope so, but there's some pretty good heavy hitters from the east that, and most people that will jump across the desert, don't matter what discipline they race, they're not coming over to enjoy our weather. They understand that they're going to come here, and they sort of fancy themselves, and so they'll come over here and they'll make our boys, or keep our boys, very, very honest.
But having said that, I mean, if you take Element's car, Dimmick's car, they're straight out of the box from USA, aren't they? They're as good as you get.
Yeah, well, Dimmick's car, I mean, that was brand spanking new towards the end of last season, and he's a pretty skillful young driver. I mean, yep, you're dead right. I mean, there's not a dud car in that whole field of 15 on Saturday night. So I think that you can see that that sort of dedication and professionalism has crept into that division, and I can see the money going better and better from now on in.
And their lap times, in fact, just let me do this. I think I've got, yes, indeed, lap time. This was for Chris Dimmick, 15.967. I mean, I've given you the time for David Nylander.
Correct.
That's late model time and better. And not far off speed car times either, if at all.
Yeah, well, that's an amazing, because they're a motorcycle engine, a 600cc motorcycle engine, and they're building out, they're carrying a 10 to 13 stone man in a very light little race car. And when you consider that's a huge amount of horsepower they're getting out onto the racetrack.
Power to weight ratio is incredible.
It's amazing.
And when you look at the technology in those cars these days, we talk often about sprint cars and indeed late models and speed cars, of course, but these little things here, the shock absorbers, the torsion bars and the springing they've got, engines, they're second to none anywhere.
Well, the technology that's gone into Speedway today, someone was saying to me the other day that Speedway is nowhere like Formula 1 racing, and I said, what do you mean by that? And he made a couple of comments. I said, well, I'm sorry, you're wrong. I said there's a huge amount of technology in Speedway, and I said those wings and the tyres, the gearing, everything. It's a whole different ball game, and probably we've seen it evolve in front of us over the last 50 years to what we've seen sprint cars come from hot rods to super modifieds to sprint cars, and now we've got the wingless, the speed cars, the formulas. I mean, a huge amount of technology, and those cars, when they go around the racetrack, they just sit so beautifully. I mean, it's amazing. It's really, really state-of-the-art stuff.
Talking about tyres,
Yep.
we mentioned on this show last week about Craig Rosberg supplying sprint
Yes.
cars one left, one rear tyre.
Correct.
It didn't seem to play or come into effect on Saturday night's racing. And if it did, it just shows that you need to manage your tyres.
Well, here's another thing. I was talking to Jeff Kendrick. I said to Jeff, well, what happens if a guy crashes and he tears his tyre up? Which can happen. It could get punctured or blown up or whatever. And he said if they have some older tyres in their race wagon, they can put the old tyre on, but they can't go and buy a new tyre to replace the tyre that was there. So on, the rule is one right, one left rear per race meeting. And he said you'll find a lot of the guys will start now where they used to throw them away, they'll hang on to them a little bit longer. Interesting, isn't it? So it's a very level playing field. So no one can really say that someone's got an advantage because he outspent the last guy or the next guy or whatever they think they might be doing.
Well, if it's a very fast track and you go out quick and burn your tyres up and you don't manage them, then you could be struggling towards the end of the race. But that's another great element in the Maddington Toyota Sprint Car Series, isn't it?
Well, one thing that's good about that particular at the moment is the fact that with a track like that, you don't hurt tyres, which is great. One criticism I have of the sprint cars, and I love the guys, I love the Priolo boys, but I think producing two cars with number 8, and they say, oh yeah, but David's 8W. I said, look, it's not the point. The point is that I think they should have a separate number. I mean, it's not like in America when states are 300 or 400 kilometres away, you can jump from one state to the next. But to have cars with double numbers, I think that's a little bit naughty. And I'm surprised the Sprint Car Council have fallen for that. I can understand if you bring an 8 from Queensland to race against our 8 here, but when you have two local boys and they're both the same name, it does confuse people. And I'm not worried about the Con Migros and the Graeme Sindens of the world. I'm thinking of the fan that sits in there, he pays his bung to go and watch his race, or even if he's a casual fan. It's so confusing. So,
Fair point. Fair point. Now, talking about crashes and sprint cars in particular, Jack Williamson, you'd have to feel for your heart goes out to him. He had a huge crash. A brand new car.
Yeah, well, that's the worst part. He tore a car up a fortnight ago at practice. They just got it together. You said when he got hit on Saturday night, which was no fault of his own, you said it looked like the front end crumbled straight away. And maybe it was weakened from the crash at the time before, I don't know. But to see the young man, I mean, when he was so proud when he unloaded the car, I was going around having a look at the cars, and when they unloaded it from the transport, they were so proud. Beautiful paint job. So the car looks a credit to you. He said, yeah, we were really wrapped. And then blow me down, a quarter way into the feature race, and there it was going home in a shoebox, as they say. Not very nice.
Well, it's a testimony to the car design and the strength, the safety equipment, the helmets and the braces and so on they have on. I've watched that footage over and again, and to me it looked like when his left-hand front wheel was hit, I'm sure that the axle snapped and that wheel came off the car, dipped to the track on the left-hand front, and then over it went. And unfortunately, it was a bit of a predicament for the crash crews because they couldn't get him out of the car for a while. They did eventually, and through no fault of their own. It was just a difficult set of circumstances, but he was able to walk away from the crash absolutely disgusted. He didn't want a TV interview. No. I just feel for Jack. As I say, it's a beautiful looking car, probably the best presented car on the track on the night.
The Graeme is also, we discussed last week with Kim Buswell about the helmet indicators. They're using it in Formula 1 and NASCAR and all that sort of stuff now. Well, Todd Davies' helmet, at the end of all that over, the stewards took his helmet away because the indicator showed that there had been some damage. So that's that's a great innovation. It's only brand new in Speedway. It's only brand new in the world. The fact that now these helmets are, even the officials, they're so conscious of the fact that head injuries and the likes, like football and that sort of stuff. Well, here's an indication when the helmet gets a bang like it did on Saturday night. I wouldn't be surprised they say, mate, you better buy yourself another helmet.
Well, Con, that just about wraps up our show for this week. We didn't have a guest, but there was plenty to talk about because of the new season starting out. And boy, I'm really keen and excited for this next Western Atlas event coming up on the 5th of November.
Yes,
yes.
Well, next week I've spoken to Trevor Harding Senior, and he'll give me an answer this week. But if he doesn't come in, we're going to bring the new state manager of Speedway Australia. He'll be in here as our guest, and they'll talk about their plans and specifications and all the information and all the things they're wanting to look forward for the future of the sport in the state.
Looking forward to that. Thanks, Con, for your company, as usual.
Yeah.
Thank you for your company. We look forward to your company again this time next week, right here on Track Chat. Bye for now.